Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michael Codner. I have sort of oversight over this particular conference. So good to see so many good friends back again, and there are others too who I'm looking forward to meeting later on. Yes, I oversee the conference with Avnish Patel, who many of you will have met, and also Sabrina Downey, who is the event manager for this particular conference. Could I just do the admin notices at the beginning? First of all, if you've got mobile phones, which most of you have, I know I can't tell you to put them off because you won't, but can you put them to silent? And when microphones and things are going round, you may find that they make a funny noise over there if they're actually on and calls are coming through or anything while the microphones are going on, so can you bear that in mind? The attribution rules for this conference, individual chairman will mention this again, but if I could just say, first of all, that the prepared remarks are all on the record, but the subsequent discussion is without attribution. So if you want to use anything said in the discussion, whether it's from the platform or from the floor, can you please get the permission of the individual before you do so? And the evacuation procedures, you'll be told by a RUSI staff member which staircase or exit door to leave if there is an emergency and you have to leave the building. The most direct way out of the building is via the main entrance, which you'd have come through, and then the front or rear exit doors. You should not use the lift. Please use the front door if the threat's from the rear, that's the mod area, and the lecture theatre doors if the threat's from the Whitehall area. And the assembly points, if leaving via the Whitehall main entrance, we muster by the statue on Mod Green, Ministry of Defence Green, of Field Marshal Alan Brooke. If leaving by the Mod carport park that way, we muster opposite the Mod North door at the junction of Horse Guards Avenue and Whitehall Court. Please evacuate according to these instructions and remain at the assembly point until we've checked you all off so we know that you're all safe, and then you'll be asked to return to the building. If there is a bomb threat, then you may be asked to remain in a safe place within the building, but hopefully neither of these are going to come to pass. Anyhow, that is everything from me. I'd like to hand over to our Director General, Professor Mike Clark, to chair the first session.
Michael, thank you very much. On behalf of the Institute, it is a great pleasure to welcome you all here to our 16th Ballistic Missile Defense Conference. It's our annual event. It's one of our longest running annual conference events, and it's always a great pleasure to see everyone here. This is very much a BMD community as well as a strategic thinking community. And one of the advantages of this sort of meeting is that there's lots of sidebar discussions which can take place in addition to the main discussions which take place in this room. I should repeat the RUSI rule that is fairly famous that I think Mike referred to, is that everything that is said here at the podium, all the formal sessions, speeches are on the record, but all of our question and answer sessions are strictly off the record. And that rule works very well as far as we're concerned. And I should thank our main sponsors, Boeing and MBDA, Navy BMD, and some of the other sponsors that you see on the screen. Our thanks to all of those, and we'll be talking about them and with them during the 2 days of the conference. Every year we talk about BMD in context, and we think about the political context of the ongoing BMD debate. And if we want to capture the changed context, I think it's all encapsulated in one little diplomatic issue last week, where the Russian ambassador to Denmark reportedly made clear that if Denmark had anything to do with European BMD, then Danish ships in the Baltic could not be guaranteed not to be targeted by Russian forces. We can make of those sorts of comments what we like, but in some respects it seems astonishing that in modern-day Europe those conversations should take place and that we should meet in the context of conversations like that. I offer it to you simply as a vignette which strikes me as very significant. And so I'm delighted that we have a keynote session which will put some of those issues into perspective. And of course our first speaker is the Foreign Minister of Romania, His Excellency Mr. Aurescu, He's got to leave by 11:30. He has a meeting with Mr. Hammond immediately after, so we can have his remarks and a brief Q&A. Let me just say that he's been Foreign Minister since November last year. He's a lawyer by training, and he dealt with the Romanian government's relationship with BMD, I think, throughout his professional governmental career. So he is an old BMD hand, as well as a lawyer and a scholar as a lawyer, and I'm delighted that we can now welcome him here since November last year as the Foreign Minister of Romania. Minister, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Professor Clark, thank you so much for this presentation. And I'm delighted to be here back again and see so many friendly faces. And to discuss about a subject that not only I hold dear, as Professor Clark just mentioned, but which is highly present and relevant in the present context, as you have mentioned. It's been 3 years since I addressed the conference in my previous position as State Secretary for Strategic Affairs in the Romanian MFA. And compared to the current shape of international affairs, 2012 seems like ages ago. This period has not necessarily been marked only by negative developments, as for an optimist there is always something positive to refer to, although at times we had to learn the hard way how to deal with the challenges we faced. Therefore, let me first approach today current developments on security, and secondly, elaborate on our conference subject, missile defense, which I see both in the context of the US-European phase adaptive approach on missile defense and the establishment of NATO ballistic missile defense capability. So, 2012 was a time when we thought that more focus on security through cooperation can be the only answer for a Europe whole, free, and at peace. Nothing in 2012 seemed to announce the security developments of 2014. Nothing at that time indicated that Russia will illegally annex Crimea, employing hybrid warfare tactics and providing support for the separatist forces in East Ukraine. Let me remind you that in January 2014, NATO and Russia cooperated in various fields, ensuring airspace security in the context of the Sochi Winter Games, developing plans for a joint NATO-Russia mission towards protecting the destruction of the Syrian weapons of mass destruction, exchange expertise on telemedicine, and so on. Few months afterwards, the security landscape in Europe changed dramatically. And there are also, of course, new risks stemming from the southern flank of NATO. Terrorism and the rise of non-state actors like Daesh, which destabilize Middle East and North African countries with a further impact on Europe and beyond. To the most of this, NATO has responded and has to respond. Our resolve to strengthen the alliance, to consolidate the transatlantic link, which remains the cornerstone of the European security, and focus on NATO's core task of collective defense is the right thing to do in order to provide an adequate response to the strategic challenges on the eastern flank, but also to the threats we face from the south. At the NATO Wales Summit, so well organized by UK last September, we adopted decisions to increase the Allied defense capability with a pledge to bring the defense spending up to 2% of each Allied GDP, to increase NATO readiness through the Readiness Action Plan. Implementation of the NATO summit decisions will ensure that a strong, flexible, and capable alliance responds quickly to the new security challenges. What else these security developments tell us? What else? That we live in an increasingly unpredictable world where our security and defense cannot be taken for granted. In this context, and aside from the security challenges reflected above, we continue to be faced with a continuous ballistic missile threat, widely acknowledged, with a growing interest from state and non-state actors to acquire advanced missile technology, which poses immediate risks to our populations, forces, and territories, sometimes even greater than conventional threats. Once unpredictable actors have this technology, it is easier to project force, to threaten, and to look for political advantages using this capability. Now this brings me to my second point. The development of the NATO missile defense capability contributes to the collective defense of the alliance, to effective deterrence, as well as to the strengthening of the transatlantic link. And allow me to make a few points in relation to Romania's view on missile defense. Why is missile defense important to Romania? Alongside NATO and EU membership, alongside the strategic partnership concluded by Romania with the United States, the United Kingdom, Poland, and I would like to salute here my friend Robert and his colleagues, the development of this strategic project is another clear sign that Romania shall never again be part of a different geopolitical setting, dictating by the course of history or geography. The small community in Tăvăselu, Romania, understood this very well and welcomed the presence of US naval forces at the Aegis Ashore facility at the Tăvăselu military base, which is a substantial contribution to NATO's collective defense. Likewise, Romania's participation in the missile defense is backed by a very strong public support. Romania's engagement in the missile defense started in 2010, when we decided to host elements of the US EPAA and thus contribute to the development of the NATO ballistic missile defense capability. The agreement between Romania and the United States on the deployment of the US ballistic missile defense system in Romania was soon negotiated, and I was the chief negotiator of that agreement, then signed and ratified almost unanimously by the Romanian Parliament in 2011. An intensive cooperation with the United States followed, leading to negotiation and signing of 14 implementing arrangements or amendments to the existing ones, work which was finished in July 2014, almost half a year ahead of schedule. Construction works at Aegis Ashore facility started soon after groundbreaking ceremony of October 2013 and are currently in full swing. The facility has been designated last October as a US naval facility, and it will be operational by the end of this year. As you can see, we have committed to this project and we have come a long way since 2012, but we are determined to accomplish this strategic project in time. My second point refers to how we see the US EPAA. Participation in the US EPAA reflects the importance of having the right capabilities to defend against the ballistic missile threat, as well as the relevance of the strategic partnership we have with the United States. From our point of view, the US EPAA represents also the US commitment to the European security, the guarantee that the United States will always be present to jointly defend Europe, as the US system in Tăvăselu will protect allied populations, forces, and territories in an efficient manner. Thus, the first Aegis Ashore has strategic value, I would say, on all accounts. Let me add two more aspects on the Aegis Ashore in Romania. The nature of the system is purely defensive, and it respects international agreements, including the INF Treaty. On the first aspect, I would like to underline that the exclusively defensive nature of the system is explicitly mentioned in the Missile Defense Agreement that I have negotiated, so I know very well what is in it. And it is both in the preamble and in the text of the agreement. For instance, in Article 6, Paragraph 1, the agreement, which is public, also provides that the system shall be used in full compliance with the UN Charter for legitimate self-defense and shall not possess offensive interceptors. Claims related to the fact that the Aegis Ashore in Romania, as well as the US EPAA and NATO BMD, respectively, may affect the strategic balance in Europe or globally, are unfounded. Beside the strong legal argument provided by the Missile Defense Agreement of 2011 on the defensive nature of the system, I would also underline the limited and small number of interceptors, as well as their technical capabilities, including their speed and way of engagement of targets, destroying them by kinetic energy, which cannot pose any kind of threat to strategic arsenals. A recent statement of Mr. Rogozin, who mentioned that the MD system cannot stop the Russian ICBMs to penetrate it, I think it's a confirmation that our Russian colleagues have understood our arguments. So, I am pleased to highlight that testing of both the interceptors and the Aegis Ashore demonstrated the effectiveness of the system. Despite this obvious reality, which is in fact acknowledged by everybody, and despite the transparent, open, and cooperative manner in which the system has been developed, we have been subject of certain assertive approaches from Russian officials. Although Russia's opposition to the system has been manifest from time to time, we either heard threats against the development of the system, or that the Russian missile capabilities cannot be hampered by it, and that in fact it does not pose a threat to Russia, as I have already mentioned. But as Professor Clark just mentioned at the beginning, most recently on Saturday, the Russian ambassador to Copenhagen mentioned that all NATO member states joining the system become targets of the Russian nuclear missiles. And let me reiterate what I have already stated on that. In solidarity with our NATO ally Denmark, no threat to use force is acceptable because it is against a fundamental principle of international law. More to this, as we know from its inception, the missile defense system was not aimed against anyone. This was repeatedly stated at every NATO summit after Lisbon. Last year in Wales, the NATO summit declaration clearly stated, and I quote, "The NATO missile defense is not directed against Russia and will not undermine Russia's strategic deterrence capabilities. NATO missile defense is intended to defend against potential threats emanating from outside the Euro-Atlantic area." On the second aspect, the Aegis Ashore system cannot be used to launch missiles covered by the INF Treaty, because the INF Treaty is about soil-to-soil missiles, while the MD interceptors are by definition soil-to-air missiles. Article 7, paragraph 3 of the INF Treaty says, if a ground-launched ballistic missile is of a type developed and tested solely to intercept and counter objects not located on the surface of the Earth, it shall not be considered to be a missile to which the limitations of this treaty apply. So I think this is crystal clear. My third point reflects the fact that the essence of the NATO ballistic missile defense capability is the consolidation of the transatlantic link. The Wales summit reaffirmed the importance of the transatlantic link. We all know that as a bedrock of allies' collective security. It also provided for the continuation of the development of the NATO ballistic missile defense capability. Based on existing NATO BMD elements, the interim capability was declared at the Chicago summit. Now the next step is to declare the initial operational capability of the NATO BMD once the Aegis Ashore in Romania will become operational, and based on all other EPAA elements such as the radar in Turkey, the Aegis ships deployed at Rota in Spain, the command and control system at Ramstein in Germany, and also other voluntary contributions of allied nations. We will continue to support the active development of the system, which reflects the solidarity and indivisibility of the security of the alliance within the broader purpose of preserving international peace and security. As you can see, we place great emphasis on the strong interlink between the development of the US APAA and the NATO BMD. The reason behind it is that beyond the fact that the US EPA is the most significant contribution to the NATO system, it reflects a superior qualitative engagement of the US as a reflection of the transatlantic bond. So we continue to attach great importance to NATO policy of cooperation with third states on ballistic missile defense. This is important for a number of reasons, including transparency, confidence building, and mutual increase of security. But sadly, despite NATO's appeals to Russia for cooperation on missile defense, Russia previously chose to stop discussions on this file. Under current circumstances, we have to decide under which conditions NATO-Russia cooperation can resume. I conclude with the hope that our approach to missile defense is understood. 2015 is a crucial year, making the Aegis Ashore in Romania operational. This delivers on our pledge for a strong alliance and for a strong transatlantic bond, and shows clearly that NATO BMD is taking shape. So we see it as a defensive strategic project necessary for the credible deterrence and for our legitimate defense, which no country can veto. We see it as an endeavor that both reflects and contributes to the strength of the transatlantic link. We see it as a chance to deliver on our promises for a Europe at peace, free from pressures or fears of unpredictable threats, and we see it as an opportunity to engage with other nations in order to bring more stability and security in the region and internationally, and not the less. Thank you for your kind attention.
Minister, thank you very much for a series of very clear and I have to say characteristically incisive statements. Thank you. So we have 10 minutes for Q&A. The Minister must be out of the building at 11:30. We are now off the record, strictly off the record, and it would be helpful, please, you will need a microphone to ask a question.